Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, this is our first episode of Best Ball Summer 2025. And here on today's episode, we are going to talk about the format of best ball itself. We are going to talk about some do's and don'ts for drafting best ball teams in the year 2025. So whether you are a beginner or an advanced and experienced best ball drafter, we're going to tell you guys what you need to know in order to have some tips and some strategies for winning money here in the 2025 season, playing best ball on Underdog, DraftKings, and Drafters. Now, obviously, it's a little late to start the proceedings here for me. I was originally scheduled to record this video on Saturday, May 3rd. And my son was born on Saturday, May 3rd, a little bit earlier than expected. So obviously it is not May 3rd right now, but having a newborn at home has kind of put a slight delay on some of my best ball content, coming out this summer. But we're officially back, kicking it off with this episode. We're going to have live drafts. We're going to have strategy shows. We're going to have all kinds of content coming your way for best ball for NFL and college football. Right now, we're focusing on the NFL side of things because college football, best ball hasn't really kicked off yet on Underdog. But we're going to kick off things here this episode, which is the general strategy video talking NFL best ball. But like I said, we're going to have more content coming all summer long. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us here for all of that content. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers. So please, if you have not subscribed already, please help me out. I cannot stress how much it helps me when you guys subscribe, when you guys like the video, when you guys leave a comment. It helps me out so much. It takes very little time, but it really does help out the content creators out there when you do things like that. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking best ball 2025. All right, so the first do of best ball for 2025 is do understand the format of the game that you are playing. If you are new to best ball is a new form of fantasy football that is taking over, in my opinion. I think that best ball is one of the lowest barriers of access to football fans, one of the lowest maintenance forms of fantasy football, one of the most fun forms of fantasy football because it's all about the draft. So if you've not played best ball before, basically what best ball does is you draft your team sometime over the summer, and you are not allowed to make any trades, make any ad drops, make any waiver claims, put anybody on IR or anything like that. But what happens at the end of every week of the NFL season is you end up with your best players in your starting lineup automatically. Whatever format, whatever website you're on automatically starts your best players. You don't have to make any start-sit decisions, and your team accumulates points over the course of the entire season. Now, there are 3 big sites that offer best ball contests right now. Best ball is largely done for money. So, yeah, if you're looking to play for free, there are free best ball leagues, but that's not what is in vogue right now. Best ball is played for large sums of money. So if you're playing on different websites, different formats are going to matter with what you're going to want to do in terms of your drafting strategy. So DraftKings, which is one of my favorites, has 20-round drafts. They are full PPR, and they do give bonus points for 300-yard quarterbacks and 100-yard rushers and receivers. The bonus points for 300-yard quarterbacks, what that ends up doing is that does end up giving a little bit of a bump to pocket passing quarterbacks that have more of a chance to hit the 300-yard mark. The full PPR scoring gives a little bit of a bump to volume-based running backs and wide receivers who might catch more passes but at lesser yards. Underdog, which is kind of like the gold standard for best ball drafting right now, they do 18 rounds. They are half PPR, and Underdog offers a lot of different contest styles. There's the sprint, which is regular best ball weeks 1 through 14, and then weeks 15 through 17 is cumulative playoff scoring. There is the marathon, which is just cumulative scoring week 1 through 17. Then there is the eliminator, which basically eliminates half the field every single week of the NFL season. And then the third website that offers big time best ball contests is Drafters. It's kind of one of the least known, but I kind of really like what Drafters has got going on out there. They do 20 rounds, full PPR like DraftKings, and they do cumulative scoring, much like the marathon contest on Underdog. So your team's points get counted all the way through weeks 1 through 17. Now, best ball tournaments, which are what most of you all probably came here for, are much different from sit and go contest. If you're doing any kind of sit and go contest or any kind of private draft or anything like that, that is just a simple X number of man draft, X number of positions get paid out at the end of the season, you're done. Tournaments, which are my favorite, are where there is a hard cutoff for the playoffs in week 14, and then week 15, 16, and 17, teams get eliminated until you end up with the final group that is going to reach week 17. Now, I will say personally that if you play tournaments like I do, you're going to have large swings in terms of return on investment, which brings me to the next, it brings me to the first don't. I'm going to get to the next do here in just a second. The first don't is don't rush to spend all of your money. We just talked about all of these contests, right? The NFL season is over 3 months away now. It's a little bit of an old slide. And basically, you've got all different kinds of contests, all different kinds of websites at your disposal. Whatever amount of money you're planning on spending on best ball drafts, don't rush to spend it all here in May or June. Use it over the course of the summer because there's going to be different promos that are available. There's going to be new games and tournaments that will drop, and we're also going to get new information that drops about NFL players. For instance, if you draft, I don't know, if Christian McCaffrey on every single one of your teams right now, and he goes out and gets injured in training camp, well, then guess what? You're done. So you should not be drafting all your teams before training camp because there's going to be a natural portion of your teams that are going to get eliminated from preseason NFL injuries. But like I was saying with the promos, DraftKings, in my opinion, does the best job of offering promos for best ball. They do all kinds of draft one, get one. They do all kinds of draft a team, get X prize back. And I've been using those to draft a lot of my teams on DraftKings so far. Personally, what I prefer to do is on DraftKings, what I like to do is just use my crowns that I have accumulated from playing DFS and doing betting on DraftKings Sportsbook, and just use my crowns as my funds for best ball over the summer. I've found that to be kind of a genuine good investment of crowns because basically any earnings that you get from best ball feels like free money. Also, new games and tournaments are going to drop all season long. As I'm recording this, Underdog just released their first Superflex contest of the season. So if you're interested in playing Superflex where you get to start 2 quarterbacks, have at that one. Not my cup of tea though. Underdog also recently dropped one called the Hound Dog that is one of my favorite contests of the season, where it is a $6 5 max entry with really good advance rates. And here's what I mean by that. The first or the next do of the 2025 best ball season is going to be understand the concept of advance rate and understand the concept of ROI. So as I just mentioned, all these tournaments that stop their regular season at week 14, most of them have a pretty similar advance rate, but a lot of them will have kind of, the devil's in the details, difference in the structure of advance rate and difference in the percentage of advance rate and the difference in the percentage of payouts, but within the same loose framework. And what I mean by that is when you enter a tournament, whether it be on Underdog, DraftKings, or Drafters, well, really just Underdog or DraftKings, you do need to look at the advance rate. For instance, the Hound Dog contest that I was just mentioning has really wide advance rates. And so what that means is that if you get a team to advance past week 14, past the regular season, then you have a better chance of advancing past week 15 and week 16 and making the finals in week 17. Now, the reason why that is important is the finals of these tournaments on Underdog and DraftKings are where all the money is. In 2023, I had a largely profitable best ball season because I had a team that made a finals on Underdog, and I had multiple ones that made semifinals and made pretty good runs. In 2024, I was negative in best ball because I didn't have any teams reach the finals. So if you play a whole lot of tournaments, your return on investment is going to be largely dependent on whether or not you get teams to the finals. So you should be targeting contests and targeting tournaments that allow you the best chance of reaching the finals, because let's be honest, the chance of reaching the finals is not likely. On average, a drafter who drafts 150 Best Ball Mania teams will put a team to the finals once every 8 years. For the uninitiated, Best Ball Mania is Underdog's large flagship contest with a $25 entry fee, and you can draft 150 teams over the course of the summer. It is quite unlikely to reach the finals based off of how the advanced structure of Best Ball Mania works. So what that means is that Best Ball Mania is largely a minus EV, minus expected value tournament, because you're not going to be getting a whole lot of value back unless you reach a finals, and you're only likely to reach a finals once every 8 years. So what that means is when you do reach a finals, you got to make it worth your while, and everything you do should be in service of reaching the finals. Now, I mentioned earlier sit and go competitions. Those likely have a larger ROI for good best ball drafters because they're likely to pay out, the top 1, 2, 3, 4 of every league or whatever positions. So if you're a good drafter, you can likely beat out a lot of the competition in that regard for 14 weeks or 17 weeks, however long you do it for. But it's a lower ceiling because you're not playing for the $1 million grand prize or the $100,000 grand prize, right? So sit and goes, good for ROI, good for EV, but definitely probably not best for the ceiling. What a lot of people play best ball for is for the big prizes up top. As I mentioned, with Best Ball Mania being over $1 million to first, DraftKings having another $1 million to first competition as well. So really, you really need to understand that if you're playing tournaments, you might be throwing money down the drain. But if you make a finals, it could be a very good payday for you. All right, so now let's get into kind of the more minute strategies of drafting, right? So, whenever you play best ball, when you log into any of these websites, you are going to see the average draft position for every player that is available on the board, right? Tip number one for drafting is don't just blindly follow ADP. And the reason why is because if you just take every player at the top of the list at ADP every time, then that would pretty much be exactly what you would get if you would just auto drafted your team, which is no fun. We don't play this we don't play this game to just auto draft teams, right? The fun is in the draft. So you should be evaluating every single decision. You should be taking a look at ADP, thinking about why it is where it is. You should be thinking about how you can build your roster in ways other than just trying to get the absolute best ADP value every single time. Now, the counter argument to that would be that the Best Ball Mania winner last year drafted a team that had some correlation. We're going to talk about that in a second, but largely stuck pretty close to ADP. They didn't really make any major huge reaches, didn't have any like huge sleepers or huge controversial things that went on. They just kind of drafted a team that made a whole lot of sense from a drafting standpoint and ended up winning Best Ball Mania off of that. Now, one thing I will say, though, regardless of ADP, is I do think that you need to follow a template for positions. And what I mean by that is this. When you draft your positions, your quarterbacks, your running backs, your wide receivers, and your tight ends, you need to have at least a set of guidelines for how many you are going to draft at each position. The example that I'm giving is on Underdog, where you only get 18 rounds. On Underdog, I only draft teams with 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Never 4, never 1. The reason why is because if you draft 1, you're going to be taking a 0 on that quarterback's bye week. And if that quarterback gets hurt, you are screwed. If you draft more than 4, then if you draft more than 3, draft 4 or more, then that is going to be spending too much capital at the quarterback position. And what that's going to do is it's going to limit your ability to build out the other positions on your roster. And so I really don't ever take more than 3 quarterbacks on Underdog or DraftKings or drafters for that matter, because basically I'm even going to get into a little more detail here where if I draft a quarterback early, if I draft a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson, I'm probably not drafting a 3rd quarterback. The only reason I would want 3 quarterbacks is if I don't trust any of them to have a ceiling week. And if you're drafting Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, you're counting on them to have ceiling weeks. Now, at the running back position, similar concept. I want to go 4 to 6 running backs. I want at least 7 wide receivers. That is by far the deepest position, by far the position with the most variance. So I want to make sure that I get a good number of wide receivers, at least 7 on my roster. And then at the tight end position, very similar to quarterback, I want to draft 2 or 3. I found myself this year going more and more 2 tight end teams because I feel like there's genuinely a lot of tight ends available, like through the top 20-ish, that you can feel pretty comfortable giving you some ceiling weeks throughout the season. And so I really don't ever feel the need to take that 3rd tight end. You know, I've done so on DraftKings where you get 20 roster spots, but I really just don't really feel a need to take that 3rd tight end all that often. So what that ends up doing for me is if I'm only taking 2 quarterbacks and only taking 2 tight ends, then I really get to load up on that wide receiver position, because wide receiver, like I said, it's the position with the most variance. It's a position where a lot of money is won and lost in best ball. Now, the next part though, I want you to have that positional template. That's pretty much what I do, right? But don't be too rigid in your drafting. You are never going to have a draft where every pick goes according to plan. What I love to do when I'm drafting is, as I'm making picks, plan out the next few picks and plan out the end of the draft, right? How everything's going to come together. But let's be honest, nothing ever goes always according to plan. So you need to have a backup plan and in mind and be willing to adjust your overall strategy as it comes into fruition. There was a draft that I was doing just last week where I had already drafted A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and I was very confident in getting Jalen Hurts to complete my Eagles stack to come back to me. And somebody in between my next pick took Jalen Hurts when they didn't have any Eagles, and it was quite frustrating. But hey, you know, it happens. Sometimes you got to have a backup plan, and sometimes you got to be willing to adjust. Now, speaking of that, let's talk about stacking. I do think that you absolutely need to emphasize stacking when it comes to drafting a best ball team. Basically, best ball is like playing daily fantasy on DraftKings or FanDuel every single week. What you want is you want to have the ability for your lineup to score the most points possible every single week. And the way to do that is by stacking a team, which is draft a quarterback with some of their receivers, some of their tight ends, maybe even a running back. And just when that team has a good offensive day, knowing that you're going to get a ton of points for your team because of it. The Best Ball Mania 5 winner, the Best Ball Mania winner from last year, was a great example of this. They had a Joe Burrow Cincinnati Bengals stack with 3 wide receivers, Chase Higgins and I believe Jermaine Burton. And then they had Brock Purdy with a 49er stack with Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle. It just so happened that this was the exact team that was needed in the Best Ball Mania finals, because in week 17, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals offense went off against Denver, and Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle went off for the 49ers as well. So absolutely build out stacks. I am very rarely taking quarterbacks and not having at least one of their pass catchers on my team. I am very rarely taking like multiple receivers off of different teams where I don't have their quarterback. I want to make sure that I'm getting as many quarterback, wide receiver, tight end combinations as I possibly can. Now, with that being said, though, do not draft the same way every time. Basically, if you were to draft the same way every time, you're going to end up with a very small portfolio of players, and you're really going to limit yourself in that portfolio of players would need to have a lot of success in order for you to win money. The more you diversify your portfolio, that will significantly allow you to win more money if different players end up having great seasons. Another thing, if you make stands in round one, that's significantly going to alter your exposure percentage over a large number of lineups. And what I mean by that is this. There's 12 picks in round one. You have a 1 in 12 chance at getting each individual pick. That is about 8%. So theoretically, for every player that gets drafted in round one, you should have about 8% of them. Very rarely do you end up with a whole lot more. Last season, one mistake that I made was routinely, I drafted Justin Jefferson ahead of Ja'Marr Chase pretty much every time I had that option in the draft room. I was wrong. And what ended up happening was I had more Justin Jefferson than Ja'Marr Chase, and Ja'Marr Chase was the guy that you ended up needing. So in round one, I am very much more comfortable with taking the guys that come to me, knowing that I'm going to end up with my 8% of that guy, and then building the rest of the team around it. And also when it comes to stacking, drafting the same exact stack really limits yourself if injuries or depth chart changes occur. For instance, last year, I mentioned that the guy that won Best Ball Mania had Jermaine Burton. Well, if you had Jermaine Burton in every single Bengals stack, then you missed out because he didn't do a whole lot. Right? You would have been much better benefited from having Andre Yoshivas and having Mike Gesicki in some of those stats along with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. The next do of best ball is do understand that when you're drafting, some players are better in best ball. And what I mean by that is best ball at its core is about finding ceiling performances. You want to find guys who can go off in any given week because that's where the money is won and lost. A player like Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions is a much better option in best ball than in season-long fantasy. So you have to really change your mindset on how you're drafting as opposed to season-long fantasy because you're just looking for guys who give you chances at the 30 and 40-point games. And with enough of those guys on your roster, you're going to get enough of the big games that you can end up, being one of the best teams in your draft in the regular season and then advancing in the postseason. Now, the next few we're going to talk about are what I call the moderation do's and don'ts, right? So what that means is we're going to have a do and a don't kind of on the same topic that are going to be basically saying, hey, this is a good thing, but in moderation, like a lot of things in life. So the first one is do have your favorite targets and sleepers. It is natural to have some guys that at the end of the drafts you want to target, draft in, and draft out, right? Right now, one of my favorites is Elijah Moore, newly acquired by the Buffalo Bills and could end up being one of their starting wide receivers, right? But don't draft them every single draft because there's a high likelihood that these favorite late round plays, these sleepers, there's a high likelihood that they end up busting. And so if you draft them in every single draft and they end up busting, then you're ending up with a dead roster spot on every single team that you draft. So you should have your favorite targets and sleepers, but you should be moderating your exposure to them. And so that way, if they do end up busting, which is a high likelihood, you don't end up totally screwed. The next one is do draft your own team, but don't go crazy in the opening rounds. We already mentioned earlier how you can really screw yourself over if you mess up in round one and you decide to totally fade a guy. But the whole point of best ball is to make your own teams, right? To do things the way you want to do it and the way you think is the best, to draft your guys. And I think that people lose sight of that in, I have to get this guy at ADP. Oh, I have to complete this stack. No, if you're able to come up with a plan and you're able to do things the way you want to, then if you're right, then you're going to end up winning some money. And that's the whole point is you want to end up drafting a team that you can feel good and you can be right with. Next up, do consider positional value as you draft, but don't make it the only factor in a selection. And what I mean by that is this. So many times I see drafts where they have, probably 6 combined running back, 1 wide receivers, and they instantly want to take quarterback. They instantly want to take tight end to fill out that starting lineup, right? You do not have to do that. You don't. You want to take the guys that you want to take, and you want to take them where you want to take them. Do not feel the need to rush to fill one position. Do not feel the need to, oh, crap, I don't have a quarterback. I need to take a quarterback right now. No. come up with a plan and take one of your guys where you want to take them. Do not feel the need to end up rushing. And if you do miss out on a guy, well, then you can just take more of that position later. As I mentioned earlier, with missing out on the Jalen Hurts play on the Eagles stack that I had, I just ended up taking 2 quarterbacks later that I could feel pretty good about. And it just so happened that neither of them were Jalen Hurts, and that's okay. You don't have to, make everything about the position as you're drafting it. The next one is do consume best ball content. Selfishly, because I have a lot of best ball content, but also because there's a lot of people out there talking best ball. There's a lot of people out there that can just have a fountain of information that can help you get better at these drafts, right? And I'm really just scratching the surface here on this episode. There's a whole lot of niche strategies that you can go with that a lot of best ball drafters are out there doing. And the only way you're going to know that is if you do consume best ball content. But don't take everything that a content creator says as truth. And that's myself included. Because here is the deal. If you were to scour Twitter, you could probably find something that is hyping up Tyreek Hill. You could probably find something that is downplaying Tyreek Hill. And that's just an example. But for every single player, there is going to be somebody out there that is going to be a champion of that player and somebody out there that's going to be a hater on that player. And whatever stats they cherry pick are going to make their argument for them. You can come up with good stats and bad stats for every single player in the NFL. And if I have a positive opinion on a guy, I'm going to find the good stats that I want to look at. If I have the negative opinion of a guy, I'm going to find the bad stats. So you need to take everything you hear with a grain of salt and decide what is important to you, what you value, and what you don't value. But like I said, the only way you're going to know that is if you do consume the content, because there's a lot of information out there that is available to you. Now, the last one, and this is the last do have fun. Best ball is a fun game. Best ball allows us to have fantasy football drafts in the months of May, June, and July before the regular season starts. It's fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. And so, whatever money you put in on it, obviously play within your means. Don't be reckless with your money. Don't spend money you don't have. Don't stress about it either. Just have fun with the draft. Have fun sweating it out as the season goes by. I have an absolute blast every time I boot up a best ball draft. I have an absolute blast when I sit down for week 15, 16, and 17, and I'm sweating out the teams that I have that are in the playoffs or in the finals, and I'm just rooting on my players to do well, right? It just, the whole point of best ball, in addition to make money, is to have fun. Don't value the entire season based off of how much you win and lose. Value the season based off of how much fun you have, because like I said, you can do everything right. You can have a good season drafting, which last year I did, but if it doesn't break your way in the playoffs in some of these tournaments, then you're just not going to end up with a profitable season. That's just how it is. So don't measure your season based off of the profit based off of the wins and losses. Measure the season based off of the fun you have, because at the end of the day, if you're not having fun playing best ball, you shouldn't be playing best ball. All right, so that is going to do it for the do's and don'ts. Reminder, we've got a lot coming your way here this best ball season. So if you want more from me, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. Join in on the Fantasy Corner Discord. That's a community of a bunch of people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. And a lot of them, we got some best ball guys in there. So if you're looking to talk best ball, if you're looking to talk DFS for any sport, join the Fantasy Corner Discord. It's a great community. It's 100% free. Also, head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. Shortly after the releasing of this video, I am going to have my best ball stacking guide as well as my best ball ranks coming out on the Patreon. If you want access to those tools, head over there. But also, most importantly, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, so that way you can be with us for the rest of Best Ball Summer 2025. Because like I said, we're going to be having drafts, we're going to be having strategy videos, target videos, all different kinds of stuff for NFL and college football best ball. And the only way you're going to know when that goes down is if you are subscribed to the channel. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. And hopefully, no matter what level you're at of best ball, whether you are a novice, whether you've been playing it for a few years like me, or whether you're grinding drafts every single day, hopefully I gave you guys some information that you can consider in your drafts and help you get better at your drafts. But that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. Like I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next.